It wasn't just the rain that night, as told by Sylvester Crow. I don't usually talk about this stuff. Not to my wife, not to my brother, not even to the other rangers over a beer when the shift ends and the woods go quiet. But you've always been the kind of guy who listens. And tonight, with the rain coming down the way it is, it feels like the right time to get this out. It happened last summer, end of July. I'd taken some time off work. Being a park ranger in Kansas keeps you outdoors, sure, but I wanted to go somewhere wild, different. Me and 4 friends, we planned a getaway. A secluded cabin deep in the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest up in Wisconsin. Middle of nowhere. Closest road was an hour out by dirt path. The kind of place where your phone dies and no one notices. It was me, Josh, old buddy from my academy days, his girlfriend Casey, her sister Rena, and Wes, quiet guy but reliable. Brought his hunting bow with him just in case. I had my sidearm and a hunting knife. That's how I was raised, always going to the woods, prepared. And of course, I brought Rusty, my dog, half shepherd, half whatever, smarter than most people I know. He doesn't bark unless he means it. You understand later why I'm telling you that. We got there midday, sun was out, and the forest had that thick green smell to it. Wet soil, pine, and something older. You know the kind. Cabin was solid, old but sturdy. No power. We liked that. It was about disconnecting, bonding. But something about the place rubbed me wrong. Even Rusty kept sniffing the air like it wasn't sitting right with him. The rain started that evening. A heavy downpour. Relentless, tapping on the cabin roof like impatient fingers. We were sitting around playing cards by lantern light, trading stories. Rena was laughing about some dumb prank from college when it happened. A scream. Not a coyote, not a bobcat. I've been in the woods all my life. I know what those sound like. This was human but wrong. Too long, too loud, full of agony. And it echoed like it came from everywhere at once. Everyone froze. Rusty bolted up, ears high, growling low. I'd never heard that sound from him before, not even when we ran into that meth head on patrol last year. Wes stood up first and grabbed his bow. I loaded a round into my sidearm and stepped outside with him. The rain made it hard to hear, but we scanned the tree line. Nothing. No footsteps, no movement. But it didn't feel empty, like something was watching. We locked the doors that night. First time I'd ever done that in the woods. The next morning, after an uneventful night of pretending we weren't scared, I remembered something I'd read years ago. When I was a kid, I used to read these old yellow newspaper clippings my granddad kept. Weird stuff. Small town disappearances, folklore, cryptid sightings. One of them was from up in Wisconsin. Talked about this creature in the forests, a Wendigo. The story said it used to be a man, ate human flesh to survive a brutal winter. Cursed by its hunger, now it roams the woods, drawn by isolation and desperation. I told the group half-jokingly, just a story, right? Josh and Wes didn't laugh. That night, it got worse. Rain came harder. We lost the trail behind the cabin entirely. No moon, just black forest beyond the edge of the clearing. Casey went out to the outhouse alone with a flashlight. 5 minutes later, we heard Rusty go berserk. I mean snapping, snarling, like he was fighting a bear. I burst out of the cabin, flashlight sweeping through the rain, and saw it. Just for a second. It was tall, taller than any man, emaciated, long limbs, pale gray skin stretched tight like it'd been burned, eyes that glowed faintly, and antlers, black, cracked, and splintered like dead wood. It was dragging Casey by the ankle into the woods. I fired. Twice. It dropped her and vanished between the trees like smoke in the wind. She was screaming but alive. Deep gash on her leg, but no broken bones. We dragged her back inside, and from the moment on, nobody doubted what I'd said about the Wendigo. We pushed furniture against the windows, tied up Rusty so he wouldn't run off. Wes sat by the door. Arrow knocked. I stood watch till sunrise. But the Wendigo didn't come again that night. It waited. Next night Rena was gone. Just gone. No sign of struggle, no sound, no broken window. Cabin door was locked. We were all inside, but around 3 a.m. Rusty started growling, and we noticed her sleeping bag was empty. We found claw marks on the inside wall near the ceiling. It had gotten in and out with her. We screamed her name into the trees, but all we got back was rain. That morning we were done. Josh wanted to go after her. I couldn't let him. She was gone. And if we didn't leave, we'd all be next. We geared up. Wes had his bow. I had my sidearm, and Josh grabbed the fire axe from the cabin. We loaded Casey onto a makeshift stretcher. She could barely walk. Rain was lighter, but the trail was mud. Halfway down the slope, the Wendigo came for us. It screamed, same as the first night, but now we could see it, full on, out in the open. Its body jerked unnaturally, head twitching, arms too long for its frame. Josh swung the axe first, took a chunk out of its arm, but it didn't flinch. Just backhanded him into a tree like a toy. Wes hit it with an arrow to the chest. Nothing. I fired my last 2 bullets into its face. It screamed and ran, not fled, just retreated. Long enough for us to get moving again. We reached the road just before sunset, soaked, bleeding, traumatized, but alive. A ranger truck picked us up 2 hours later after hearing the emergency beacon I'd buried in the cabin crawl space. Josh had a broken rib. Casey needed surgery. Wes quit his job and moved to Arizona. Said he never wanted to see a forest again. Me? I still work the parks, but I don't go into the woods without Rusty, and I sure as hell don't trust stories labeled folklore anymore. That night, something old and hungry walked among us. And if you ever find yourself in the woods of northern Wisconsin, and the rain starts falling heavy, and the wind sounds like a scream, don't look into the trees, don't answer the cry, and don't go out alone. You might not come back. The Thing in the Pines, was told by Sam Stallone. You ever seen a man lose his mind without a drop of alcohol? Without a drug in his system? I have. And it started with a sound I can still hear when the rain hits the roof the right way. Look, I don't blame you if you think I'm nuts after this. I probably would too. But you're asking what happened, and I can't tell it any other way but straight. No sugar, no metaphor. Just the truth. Or as close to it as I can get without going back there and dying for it. It was this past spring. I'm a park ranger out of eastern Oregon. Spent more time in the trees than around people. I'd taken a few weeks of leave and decided to meet up with some old trail buddies. Carter, Mason, and a guy named Phil, who used to work as a wilderness survival instructor in Idaho. We all had experience. We weren't kids looking to play survivor. Carter had found this old hunting cabin in the Lewis and Clark National Forest, Montana side. Remote, barely marked on maps and totally off-grid. It was supposed to be a detox trip. No phones, no pressure. Just us, the woods, and the trails. We packed light. Mason has his hunting rifle. Carter brought a machete, don't ask. And I had my Glock, standard issue. Phil, being the naturalist, brought nothing but a fixed blade and bear spray. That guy always had something to prove. We hiked in as the clouds were building. Forecast said light storms. Nothing serious, but Montana doesn't play by the forecast. By the time we reached the cabin, it was already raining sideways, wind howling through the trees like the forest was exhaling something foul. That should have been our first clue. Night one was calm enough. Played some cards by lantern light, cooked up sausages over a fire pit out back. Storm pounded the roof, but we were used to worse. It was around 1:30 a.m. when I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. Not thunder, not rain, not an animal. It was this low moaning growl, stretched out like it came from something starving. Not the pitch of a bear or the shriek of a mountain lion. More human, but wrong, garbled, like something trying to mimic a voice but not quite understanding how the throat's supposed to work. I sat up in my bunk, listening. Carter was already awake, staring at the cabin door. "You hear that?" he whispered. I heard it. We didn't wake the others. We just listened. Eventually, it faded into the storm. Next morning, I brought it up at breakfast. Phil laughed it off, but Mason wasn't smiling. He asked if we'd ever heard of a rougarou. Now look, I watch my fair share of weird movies when I'm bored, especially the old ones, where the acting's bad and the monster's a guy in a rubber suit. But I remember one flick I saw late at night, Curse of the Rougarou, or something like that. Thought it was just a cheap Skinwalker knockoff. Mason said it wasn't a joke. "It's from the old Louisiana stories," he said, "but it pops up in native folklore up here, too. A man cursed, sometimes for cannibalism, sometimes just for breaking a taboo. It changes him, long limbs, stag head, always hungry, and it mimics voices, draws you out." We brushed it off, joked about getting footage for YouTube, but something about the way Mason said it stuck with me. His hands were shaking while he packed his gear that morning. We tried to hike the ridge trail that morning, but a fallen tree blocked the path. He went back, gathered wood, and decided to ride out the storm another day. That night, the sound came back, but this time it was closer. It started with footsteps, slow, dragging, too heavy for deer but too light for a bear. Then came the voice. I swear to you, I heard something calling my name. "Sam, help me, Sam." It was my voice, or close enough to it to twist my gut sideways. I grabbed my Glock and stepped outside with Mason and Carter. The air smelled like copper and wet fur. Trees shifted, though there was no wind. Then we saw it. Just a silhouette between the trees, standing perfectly still. 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Antlers, long arms that hung too low, like they were stitched from the wrong pattern. Then it vanished. We locked down the cabin. No fire, no light, just the rain and the wind and our breathing. Phil was pacing like a trapped animal. Carter kept his hand on the machete. Mason sat by the door, whispering something under his breath. Around 4 a.m., something hit the side of the cabin, hard, like a battering ram. We all jumped up. Phil sprayed the door frame with bear spray like that would do anything. Carter opened a small window, flashlight sweeping the tree line. That's when we saw it again, closer. It wasn't in full view, but enough to turn your blood cold. Antlers, like gnarled tree branches, eyes that reflected light wrong, and teeth, too many, too thin. It didn't charge, it just stood there, watching. Then it screamed, not loud, low and wet and vibrating, a scream that seemed to bubble up from deep underground. Around dawn, the thing came back. It didn't try to trick us this time. No voices and no shadows. It rammed the door off its hinges. Phil was the first to react. Charged it with a blade like a lunatic. He was brave, I'll give him that. But the thing swatted him aside like a sack of laundry. I saw Phil hit the wall and go limp. Carter swung his machete, caught the thing across the chest. No blood, just black fluid and something that smelled like rot. I fired twice. One round clipped its shoulder. The second hit square in the side of the head. It didn't fall, just hissed like a steam valve letting off rage. Then it turned and ran, like it wasn't ready yet, like it'd come back later. Phil was breathing, but barely. We knew we couldn't carry him out, not all the way to the car, 3 miles down a muddy trail. But Carter had an idea. The old logging road nearby, overgrown, but we passed it on the way in. It was closer, maybe a mile and a half. If we could get there, we could flag a ranger chopper that occasionally patrolled the area. We tried Phil to a sled made from bench wood and tarp. I carried my Glock. Mason had Phil's knife. Carter had the machete. We moved fast. No talking, just mud, thunder, and the eyes behind every tree. The creature followed. I could feel it. No sound, no movement, but it was watching, waiting for us to mess up. Halfway down the road, Carter screamed. Something had grabbed his leg. He hacked wildly with the machete, screaming like an animal. I turned and fired into the dark. Nothing. Whatever it was, let go, and we got him up. We made it to the logging road clearing just before noon, and by some miracle, a ranger chopper was already overhead. We fired a flare. They saw us. We were out before the thing came again. Phil recovered, moved to Florida, doesn't talk about Montana anymore. Carter has a scar across his calf that looks like it was made by broken antlers. Mason still calls me once a month, usually after it rains. And me? I went back to work. Park ranger life doesn't stop for monsters, but I haven't taken any more cabin trips, not even close. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't a legend. It wasn't some backwoods story or movie plot. It was real. It is real. And it's still out there. So if you ever find yourself in the mountains of Montana during a storm, and you hear someone calling your name from the trees, don't answer, because it's not your friend, it's not human, and it never was. The fog between the trees, as told by Sam Rambo. You ever hear a sound so wrong, so deep in your bones, that your body reacts before your mind understands why? That happened to me once, and it's why I don't go hiking in the Blue Ridge anymore. I don't even like talking about it. Hell, most days I try to forget it ever happened. But some nights, when the clouds roll low over Boulder, and the wind cuts through the pines outside my window just right, I swear I hear it again. That thud, that growl. And I think about Jeremy. It was October, crisp gray skies, leaves just past peak color. Perfect time to get out before winter set in. I'd taken a week off from ranger duty. The idea was simple. Me, my brother Jeremy, our cousin Louis, and my buddy Matt drive down to a cabin Jeremy had rented on the edge of the Pisa National Forest, right near the base of the Blue Ridge. Not the fancy kind of cabin either. No power, no cell signal, no nothing. Just us, our gear and the trees. Jeremy thought it'd be funny to bring our Warhammer minis, like we were gonna play board games all weekend in the middle of nowhere. We never even opened the case. The drive up was uneventful. We parked half a mile from the cabin and hiked in. The place looked like it had been built in the 60s, maybe earlier. Wood rot, rusted hinges, but solid. One door, 4 bunks, a stove that ran on butane. That first day was perfect. Cold beer, grilled sausage, and the kind of stories you only tell when you're far enough from the rest of the world. Now, this matters. I'd heard stories about Bigfoot growing up, not from the internet but from my uncle Jack, who'd been a ranger in Tennessee for decades. He told us once, dead sober, that he'd seen something near Klingma's dome back in '78. Tall, white, covered in hair, and faster than any bear should be. He said the forest went quiet when it walked by, like it drained the sound out of the air. I laughed at the time, but I never forgot the way his hands trembled when he told it. So it's late, around 11. Clouds were thick enough to choke out the moon, and the wind had picked up, rattling the old cabin roof. We were sitting inside, half asleep, when we heard it. Thud. Deep, heavy, like something dropped a refrigerator in the woods. Jeremy sat up immediately. Did you hear that? Then came the second sound, like a breath. Wet, low, and too close. Matt grabbed a flashlight and we stepped out onto the porch. And the forest was dead. No crickets, no wind. Just silence. Then something moved. Not far off. I caught the sound of crunching branches, deliberate and slow. Not a deer, not a bear. Something heavier. Louis said we should go back in. We did. We locked the door, all of us wide awake now. We told ourselves it was just a black bear, maybe a big one. But even Louis, who hunted elk in Colorado, didn't look convinced. Next morning, there were tracks. Not boot prints, not hooves, just white, deep impressions in the wet leaves. Each about 20 inches long, 5 toe marks, barefoot. Whatever it was had circled the cabin at least twice. Matt wanted to leave right then, said he had a bad feeling. I said no, we still had daylight. We were armed, my Glock, Jeremy's 30-30 rifle, Louis' hunting bow, and Matt's big survival blade. We decided to hike east, try a ridge trail for a few hours, and then decide. Around 2 p.m., the weather turned, fast. Fog rolled in thick and temperature dropped, like a switch flipped. The trail started disappearing, under wet leaves and mud. We turned back. That's when we heard it again. Thud. Then again, closer. Thud. Thud. Then came a scream. It wasn't human. Not quite. It was deep, echoing and laced with something that sounded like pain or rage. Matt spun around and shouted Jeremy's name, but he wasn't there. We shouted, we ran, we searched the trees. He was gone. 10 minutes of panic later, Louis saw something through the trees. Movement, large, fast, uphill. We followed, I don't know why, instinct maybe, but we saw it. And I swear to you, I wish we hadn't. It was at least 9 feet tall, covered in hair so black it looked like smoke, shoulders like tree trunks, eyes glowing faintly orange in the grey light, and it carried something. Jeremy. Slunk over its shoulder like a deer carcass. I fired. Twice. Hit nothing. Louis loosed an arrow. It glanced off the thing's back like it was wearing armor. And then it disappeared into the fog. We chased it, but the woods swallowed us whole. The thing moved like it knew every tree, every stone. We were outmatched. After an hour we found part of Jeremy's jacket, ripped and soaked. Then we heard another scream, this time farther away. Matt said we had to leave. He was shaking, white as a sheet. Louis agreed. We marked the spot, but there was no blood, no trail, no way forward. We hiked back in silence, weapons drawn, constantly checking behind us. When we reached the cabin, we packed in under 5 minutes. We left everything that didn't matter, left behind our game pieces, food, extra gear. We got to the car as the sun dropped behind the ridge. Clouds stretched low, as if the sky was pressing down on the trees. On the drive back, no one spoke until we hit the gas station an hour away. Search and rescue never found Jeremy. They searched for weeks, dogs, drones, nothing, no tracks, no clothing, no scent. Official cause? Lost during severe weather conditions. But I know what we saw, and you can believe me or not, but you weren't there. You didn't hear that thing walk around your cabin like it owned the place. You didn't see your brother vanish like a whisper in the fog. I've been a park ranger 15 years. I've seen bear attacks, I've tracked cougars. This wasn't that. This was something older, smarter, and it took my brother.